When I was a kid, my family used to travel a lot across the country. Dad worked construction and Mom homeschooled me and my younger sister Emily. We lived most of our early years in an RV, crossing state lines like it was normal. National parks, back roads, rest stops. Those memories built the foundation of my life. The travel bug never left me. In my 30s, I became a professional photographer. I specialized in forgotten places, ghost towns, abandoned gas stations, shuttered motels. America hides its past in plain sight, and I loved uncovering it. So did Emily. She didn't become a photographer, but she had the same itch for the unexplained. She joined me on trips whenever she could, especially when we were chasing local legends. The last one we chased was in northern Nevada. There's this stretch of desert known locally as the Gray Mile. No towns, no gas stations, no signs of life for almost 100 miles. According to Tormore, somewhere along that highway, if you take a wrong turn off the main road, you can find an old town not listed on any map. Sable Ridge. People say it appears only to the truly lost. That alone would have been enough to tempt us, but the lore got weirder. Stories of radio interference, people vanishing for days and showing up elsewhere with no memory. Strange lights in the sky. It sounded like pure creepypasta nonsense. But Emily, she was obsessed. She convinced me to go. We were already in Utah, and it would only take a day to reach the area. She even found an old CB radio forum where a guy claimed to have visited the place back in the 80s. His post was full of rambling nonsense, but he mentioned coordinates. That was enough for her. We loaded up my SUV, snacks, water, batteries, and a spare tire, and set off for the Gray Mile. The first day was uneventful. Hot, dusty, and boring. The highway was as empty as promised. We passed maybe 2 cars all, and no cell signal, no towns, just endless stretches of gray pavement and red earth. The only markers were sun-faded mile signs and the occasional tumbleweed. Around sunset, Emily spotted something strange on the horizon. A turnoff, not paved, just dirt and gravel, with a weathered sign bent at an odd angle. The lettering had long since worn off. "I think this is it," she said, pulling up the screenshot of the coordinates. I checked the GPS. We were close. Too close for coincidence. "You sure?" I asked. She nodded. "If we don't go now, we'll miss it." I didn't like it. The sky was already bleeding orange into purple. The road was narrow and swallowed quickly by dry brush and shadow. But curiosity is stronger than fear, so I turned. The dirt path felt endless. 10 minutes in, we hit the first anomaly. The radio static. I hadn't touched the dial, but suddenly the speakers hissed, popped, and crackled. Then it stopped. A voice whispered, "Okay, stay." I glanced at Emily. She heard it too. Her eyes were wide, but she said nothing. I kept driving. 20 minutes later, the SUV headlights picked up structures ahead, faint outlines of buildings, old ones, a post office, a diner, a gas station frozen in time. There were no lights, no people, but the town was unmistakably there. "Holy crap," Emily whispered. We found it. We parked in front of the diner. The neon sign buzzed faintly, though no electricity should have been running. Sable Ridge Diner, it read, flickering on and off. The air was thick, heavy, like a thunderstorm was about to break, but the sky above was clear. I grabbed my camera and Emily took a flashlight. We stepped out. The town wasn't just old, it was preserved, like someone had frozen it in the moment it died. Tables in the diner still had plates on them. A newspaper box outside held copies. Dated July 3rd, 1987. Emily nudged me. "Look at this." There were footprints in the dust, fresh ones, leading from the diner door around the corner. We followed them. Behind the diner was a church, its steeple leaning precariously. The front door was ajar and the footprints led inside. "Maybe someone else found the town?" I offered, my voice thin. Then where's their car? Emily whispered. We entered. The church was colder than the outside. Not in a metaphorical sense, physically colder. My breath fogged. Emily rubbed her arms. The pews were dusty but intact. At the altar stood a figure. My heart jumped, but it didn't move. It was a statue, life-sized. A man in a priest's robes, but not stone or marble. This looked like it had been carved from wax. The detail was disturbing. Eyebrows, skin pores, even veins. Emily circled around it. I snapped a photo. The flash revealed something I didn't notice at first. There were more statues in the pews, sitting silently. Men, women, even children, all lifelike, all frozen. This isn't art, Emily whispered. These were people. My stomach turned. I want to leave, I said. But when we exited the church, the town had changed. The SUV was gone. Not vandalized. Gone. Like it had never been there. I turned in circles, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The diner was still there, but its sign no longer glowed. The gas station looked burned out. Half the town had shifted. Structures we saw earlier now looked ruined or entirely different. Emily gripped my arm. Nick, what time is it? I looked at my watch. We at 13 a.m. Last time I checked, it had been barely 9:30. A low humming sound started. It vibrated in my bones. From behind the buildings, lights began to pulse. Not yellow or white, blue, then red, then purple, like aurora borealis, but sick, angry colors. Took Emily's hand and ran. We ducked between buildings, trying to find the road we came in on. It was gone, literally. Just hard pan desert stretching in all directions. No tire tracks, no sign of a path. And then the voices came. From the church, from the buildings, from the air itself. Stay, 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 stay. We backed into the gas station, barricading the door with a rusted shelf. Through the windows, we saw shapes begin to appear. Some walked like people, others crawled. Twisted forms with two long arms, heads that lolled unnaturally. Emily broke down crying. I pulled her close, trying to keep it together. The lights outside pulsed faster. The humming grew louder. And then, just as quickly as it all began, silence. We woke up in the SUV, engine off, parked on the highway's shoulder. The town was gone. The GPS said it was 8:04 a.m. July 2nd. The day before we had even taken the dirt road. Emily still had dust on her shoes. I still had photos on my camera. But the timestamp? July 4th, 2 days missing. We drove in silence for hours. Eventually, we made it to a town with signal and called our parents, then a motel, then therapy. We don't talk about it. Not really. Emily deleted the photos months later. I asked her why. She just said, because they started to move. That was 3 years ago. We've both settled into quieter lives now. But sometimes, late at night, I hear that whisper again when I drive long stretches of road. Stay. And I know Sable Ridge is still out there, waiting for the next curious soul to find it. This happened to me about 15 years ago when I was 13. And even now I still get chills thinking about it. I grew up in northern Wyoming, not far from the Bighorn Mountains. My family owned a massive piece of land that had been passed down for generations. We weren't farmers or ranchers exactly, more like caretakers. The land had old buildings, equipment, even remnants of old mining tunnels. It was isolated. Our nearest neighbor was about 4 miles away, and even they were rarely around. I was homeschooled most of the time, and my parents ran a small hunting lodge out of the property. They'd host seasonal hunters during elk and deer season. Off-season, things got eerily quiet. One autumn weekend, my parents left to attend a Itaka funeral in Cheyenne. They took my younger brother, Liam, with them. I begged to stay behind, partly because I hated funerals, and partly because they promised a delivery was scheduled. A guy was supposed to bring over some new fencing panels and drop them by the tool shed. It was supposed to arrive Saturday evening. I was left with one job: meet the delivery truck and help guide the panels off the trailer using Dad's old dolly. Saturday came and went. No truck. At first I thought maybe it got delayed. The roads out here weren't the best. But then, around 1:30 a.m., I heard the gravel on the driveway crunching. I peeked out the window and saw headlights slowly approaching through the tree line. They weren't normal headlights either. One was brighter than the other, like it was out of alignment. The vehicle itself looked more like an old box truck than a semi. No company logos. Just dull, rust-patched white metal. The truck came to a stop. The engine stayed running. No one got out. 5 minutes passed. 10. I turned off the house lights, grabbed Dad's old shotgun from behind the kitchen door. Not loaded, but I didn't care. And waited. Finally, the driver's side door opened. A man stepped out slowly, like every movement hurt. He looked dirty. His clothes were dark, but I could see splotches on his sleeves, and his hat was pulled down too far to see his face clearly. He walked like his knees didn't bend all the way. I stepped out onto the porch. "Are you here for the delivery?" He didn't answer. Just nodded slowly, then walked to the back of the truck. That's when I noticed something else. There was writing all over the side of the vehicle. Not spray painted, scratched in. Names. Dozens of them. Some were full names. Others were just initials, but they were deep, as if someone had carved them in with a knife or nail. Something about that made my stomach flip. He opened the back of the truck with a loud screech. I expected to see the fencing panels. Instead, it was dark. Completely. No cargo lights, no visible panels. Just a gaping black space with what looked like some kind of plastic tarp covering part of the floor. "You help unload," he said finally. His voice was hoarse like gravel in a blender. "I'll just take them down here," I said, not moving from the porch. He stared at me for a moment, then motioned to the truck. "Need help? Inside?" "No, that's all right." He turned and climbed halfway in, fiddling with something behind the tarp. Then he stopped and called out again. "Something stuck. Need you." His voice was different that time. Not rough, just wrong. Too calm, too flat, like he was reading the words off a script. I stayed on the porch. After a minute, he climbed back out, not looking at me, and started walking around the side of the house. "Hey," I called. "Where are you going?" He didn't answer. I heard gravel crunching toward the shed. I ducked back into the house and locked the door. I watched him from the back window. He stood outside the shed, just staring at it. Then he pulled out what looked like a crowbar and started prying the door open. I didn't wait. I called my dad. No answer. I called 911. No signal. I was shaking. I didn't want to go outside, but I couldn't let him tear the place apart. So I grabbed the key fob for the truck in the garage and pressed the panic button. The horn blared. The man spun around fast, too fast, and glared at the house. I ducked. The horn startled him at least. He backed away from the shed and walked back to the truck. Before he climbed in, he looked up at my window. His face was pale, not white, gray. And his eyes looked burnt, not bloody, not swollen. Burnt, like charcoal marbles sunken into his head. He didn't blink. He got in and drove off slowly. The taillights blinked erratically, and I watched him turn down the main road. But that wasn't the end. Half an hour later, I saw lights again. Different lights. Red, blue, white, flashing and moving between the trees. I stepped onto the porch again and listened. Voices. They weren't speaking English. It was a different cadence. Sharp clicks mixed with whispers and hums. One of the lights passed across the clearing like someone scanning the ground. Then it went dark, and suddenly, I heard a noise inside the house. I turned. The attic access panel in the hallway was slightly open. I don't remember climbing the stairs or grabbing the shotgun again, but I do remember the smell, burnt skin and motor oil. I pushed the attic panel closed and locked it. The noise stopped. Morning came. My parents returned to find me sleeping on the floor, the unloaded gun still in my arms. There was no sign of the truck, no scratches in the gravel, no names on any vehicle. Nothing in the shed was disturbed, except for one thing. On the back of the front door, carved into the wood, was a name, mine. I don't know who or what that man was, but I do know that whatever curiosity he expected to lure me into that truck with, it didn't work, because something inside me told me, once you step in, you don't step out, and I've trusted that instinct ever since. About 5 years ago, my now husband and I were making a long road trip from the East Coast to the West Coast. We were moving, finally trading our cramped apartment in New Jersey for a quieter life in Oregon. It wasn't our first long drive, but it was by far the most exhausting. We had the car packed to the brim, luggage, boxes, 2 crates for our cats, and bags of junk food we swore we wouldn't eat but did anyway. By the time we hit the 4th day of driving, we were half delirious. We'd spent the night in a questionable motel in Oklahoma, and we just wanted the trip to be over. Around 3 a.m., somewhere in the middle of New Mexico or Arizona, we saw a sign for a 24-hour rest stop and decided to pull in. The place was strange. It was well lit but too quiet. No humming from vending machines, no sound from the nearby highway. Just a big, wide-open parking lot surrounded by desert. A row of dimly lit buildings stood off to the side. Restrooms, a visitor center, and what looked like an old gift shop, long closed. There were only 2 other vehicles in the lot. One was a beat-up RV with curtains drawn tight. The other was a long, metallic gray van parked near the restrooms. The van had no windows, no plates, just sitting there like it had been waiting for something. We parked near the middle of the lot. My husband Eric needed to use the restroom, so I offered to take the cats out for a quick stretch. They hated the crates and had been yowling non-stop for the last hour. We had this little pop-up playpen we'd been using at rest stops to let them move around for a bit. As Eric headed off, I set up the pen near the grass patch under one of the dim lights and carefully let the cats out. They were still agitated, but calmed down after a few minutes of prowling in circles. I sat down next to them, sipping from a bottle of warm water, watching Eric disappear around the corner toward the restrooms. That's when I noticed it. The van's brake lights flickered, just for a second. Then they went dark again. I figured maybe someone inside was just checking their phone or adjusting something. I glanced back at the cats. They were both frozen, tails puffed, ears low, staring at the van. Then I heard the click, the sound of a door unlocking. The side panel of the van slid open about halfway. No one stepped out. No voices. Just silence. And that's when I made my first mistake. I got up to look. Curiosity is a stupid thing sometimes. It starts small, like a question that taps on the back of your mind and gets louder the more you ignore it. Should have just zipped up the pen and gone to the car. But instead I left the cats and walked a few steps toward the van, telling myself I was just making sure nothing weird was going on. The inside was pitch black. Then a sound came from within. Whisper. Not words, just whispering. Like someone talking too quietly to make out, and from more than one voice. I turned back toward the cats, and that's when I realized they were gone. The pen was still there, unzipped, but no cats inside. I spun around, heart thudding, looking in every direction, and then I heard something behind me, a voice. Don't let them get too far. It was coming from the van. I turned again and saw the silhouette of someone sitting in the driver's seat, even though I could have sworn no one had been there before. The whispering had stopped. I backed away toward the pen, calling for the cats softly. No response. Then I heard a yowl, a familiar, frightened screech from the other side of the building. I hesitated, torn between grabbing the pen and going after them. But another yowl followed, this one more desperate. I ran. Rounding the corner of the building, I found both cats pressed against the back wall, puffed up and hissing at nothing. I scooped them into my arms, barely noticing the scratches, and turned back toward the lot. That's when I saw the van again. It had moved. It was now parked directly in front of our car. Eric still wasn't back. I started walking fast toward the building, clutching the cats to my chest when the sliding door of the van opened fully. I didn't want to look, but I did. Inside were rows of cages. Not empty. I couldn't make out what was inside them, but something was moving. Slowly, unnaturally. Then a shape stepped out from the shadows. It wasn't the driver. It was someone, or something, taller than any person should be. It didn't walk out. It unfolded, like it had been compressed and was now stretching into shape. I froze. Then a loud slam behind me made me jump. It was Eric, rushing out of the restroom building. "Get in the car!" he yelled. I bolted toward him, and together, we ran past the van. He slammed his door shut before I even got my seatbelt on. Tires screeched as he threw the car in reverse, nearly clipping the corner of the curb, then tore out of the lot and back onto the highway. We didn't talk for a long time. After we got back on the interstate, I finally asked him what he saw. He said when he'd gone into the bathroom, everything seemed fine, until he tried to leave. The door wouldn't open, like it had been locked from the outside. He said he banged on the door, yelled, even kicked it. Nothing. Then he heard footsteps, several sets, soft shuffling ones moving past the entrance, followed by a low humming sound. He doesn't remember how the door unlocked. It just did suddenly, and when he came outside, he saw me holding the cats, standing frozen, and the van, and the figure. We didn't stop again until the sun came up. I don't know what that van was, or what was in it. I've searched for stories since then, about traveling vans, about people disappearing from rest stops, about whispers and strange cages, but I haven't found anything that comes close. Still, 5 years later, I think about that moment every time I see a van on the road with no windows, especially when I hear the faintest hint of a whisper coming from nowhere. It was the summer after my first year of college. I'd just turned 18, and everything felt like a fresh start, my first real taste of independence. I was driving home from my brother's wedding, a 5-hour trip through a patch of rural highways I didn't know well. I was excited to see my family, but also a little anxious about driving solo that far. The day was bright and hot, the sky a perfect blue with just a few wisps of clouds. I was cruising along a 2-lane highway somewhere in the middle of Tennessee, maybe I-40, but I wasn't paying attention to the signs anymore, just focusing on keeping my speed steady. Traffic was a bit heavy, but nothing unusual for a Friday afternoon. That's when I noticed the semi-truck behind me. It was tailing me in the right lane, close but not aggressive. At first I thought maybe it wanted to pass, so I kept to the left lane and eased up on the gas. But the truck stayed exactly where it was, refusing to pass. Then the headlights started flashing. Long bursts, not the quick flash drivers use to say, "You can go." This felt different. I glanced in my rearview mirror, and the driver waved at me. Then he honked. A slow, deliberate honk. That's when my stomach sank. Something wasn't right. I decided to pull off at the next exit, which had a small gas station. My mind raced. Maybe something was wrong with my car. I'd patched a tire just a week before and had been worried it might be giving out. Better safe than sorry, I told myself. The truck followed me off the highway and into the gas station parking lot. It parked in the designated truck zone, about 10 yards from my car. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I stepped out, phone already in hand. The screen lit up on 911. My heart was pounding as I walked quickly around my car, checking the tires, looking for any signs of trouble. Nothing seemed wrong, but the driver was already climbing down from his cab and heading toward me. He was a man in his late 30s or early 40s, not particularly tall, maybe about 170 pounds. His eyes were sharp, and his clothes looked like he'd been on the road for days. My gut screamed at me to keep distance. As he approached, he smiled. Not friendly, more like a predator sizing up his prey. "Well, ain't you a pretty little thing?" he said with a slow drawl that made my skin crawl. I forced a tight smile, keeping my voice steady. "Thanks." He offered to pay for my gas, which I declined without hesitation. I didn't want to owe him anything or seem vulnerable. Then came the questions. Where you headed? Where you from? In college? Each question felt like a test, and I answered with lies. A fake hometown, a made-up school, and a story about just passing through on my way to visit family nearby. He didn't push hard, but he didn't leave either. The way he looked at me made me feel trapped. I kept one hand on my phone, ready to press send. Finally, the pump clicked off and I quickly thanked him and got back in my car. As I pulled away, I caught a last glimpse of him standing by his truck watching me leave. He didn't follow me back onto the highway. I never saw his truck again. I never called 911 that day. I don't know what his intentions were. Maybe he was just a creepy guy with nothing better to do. Or maybe something darker. All I know is that my gut instinct saved me. And now, every time I see a semi-truck on the road, I remember that day. The flashing lights, the way he lingered, the weight of fear that settled over me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't trusted myself. A few months ago, I was driving back to college after spending a quiet weekend with my parents. Nothing special, just a couple of home-cooked meals, laundry done, and that bittersweet feeling of leaving the comfort of home. The drive was about 2 hours and I had my dad's old Ford pickup. Beat up, paint chipped, but reliable. It was just me, my Spotify playlist, and miles of Tennessee highway. I'm 21, 5 and 3 on a good day. Not exactly intimidating, but I've never really been afraid of driving alone. I grew up around trucks, dirt roads, and people who waved at strangers. So even when things got quiet on long stretches of asphalt, I never thought twice about being alone. That night I left a little later than I should have, around 8:30 p.m. The sun was already dipping low, sky going from golden to bruised purple. By the time I hit the interstate, it was full dark. Just headlights and taillights, the glow of passing signs, the kind of night where the shadows get deeper than they should be. I was in the far left lane of a 3-lane highway, just vibing, singing to Florence Plus Is the Machine, tapping the steering wheel like a dork. That was when I noticed the semi in the far right lane. At first, nothing weird. He was just pacing me, keeping perfect speed though, which caught my attention. Most semis either pass you or you pass them. They don't cruise next to you for miles. I slowed a little. So did he. I sped up. He matched me. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe he had cruise control on. But I snuck a glance over. He was looking right at me. Middle-aged, balding, faded blue shirt, hands on the wheel, but his face, he was smiling. Wide, unblinking, like he knew me, like he was watching a show. He raised his hand and waved. I gave a half-hearted wave back, polite, dismissive. He merged into the center lane, now just 1 lane away, and still smiling. I told myself to focus. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe he was just bored. I didn't want to overreact. But when I glanced over again, he was holding up 1 finger. Just 1, like he was counting down, or warning me. That was when the unease turned to full-body alert. I sped up again, harder this time. I passed a couple of cars and slipped into the center lane, thinking maybe I could lose him in traffic. But he mirrored me, swerved around the cars with practiced ease and blocked me from merging away. He knew how to drive that thing. Really knew. The way he manipulated traffic, it was like he'd done this before. Like trapping someone on the road was routine. 5 miles, 10. He never lost pace. Never lost that smile. I finally called 911. My voice was shaking, but I gave them everything. License plate, Pennsylvania. White trailer, black cab, description of the driver. The dispatcher was calm, professional. Asked me to pull over if it was safe. It wasn't. The left shoulder was too narrow, barely enough for a sedan. And the idea of stopping while he was behind me? No way. But then, like fate gave me a window. He got stuck behind a slow car in the center lane. I floored it, dipped across 2 lanes, and gunned it down the right side. For the first time, he didn't match me. He was stuck. I thought I'd lost. Dispatcher told me to exit at the next service plaza. I did. It was a well-lit rest stop with a small gas station, vending machines, and a separate lot for semis that looped around back. I pulled into the front lot near the entrance and watched my mirrors like a hawk. 3 minutes later, he pulled in. No brake lights, no signal, just there. Like he knew I'd exit, like he'd planned it. My heart slammed. I told the dispatcher he followed me. She said officers were on the way. Reassured me. Stay put, she said. But I didn't feel safe. Not in the open like that. So I pulled out of the lot and drove next door to a gas station that overlooked the truck yard. Parked under a light. Told myself he wouldn't find me there. I was wrong. 10 minutes later, I saw him not in the truck, on foot. He was walking through the plaza, casual like someone stretching their legs. But then he stopped behind one of the tall concrete columns outside the vending machine area and just stood there. Perfect view of where I'd parked earlier. Just watching, waiting. I told the dispatcher. She said again, officers were close. Hold tight. But then he moved, started walking toward where I had been. Then slowly, like a horror movie playing in real time, he circled the lot. His smile was gone now. He looked angry, searching, calculating. Then, somehow, he turned his head and looked right at me, across the highway, through the gas station glass. His face changed, like he recognized me again, or realized I'd outsmarted. And then something happened that still doesn't make sense. He raised his hand and held up 2 fingers, like a countdown. First 1, now 2, like this was all just beginning. I floored it, told dispatch I was done waiting. I got back on the highway and drove. Didn't stop for anything. Didn't slow down until I hit the edge of my college town. I never saw him again, but I think about him all the time. That face, that smile, that countdown. Was I the first, was I the second, or was he counting up? Like I was part of a game, part of a pattern. I bought pepper spray the next day, and a stun gun. I don't drive anywhere at night without them. And now, whenever I pass a semi on the highway, I glance up, I check just in case. Because whatever that man was doing, I don't think it was random, and I don't think he was human.